culinary wellness is really important, as you can imagine, as you're dealing with your patients, is the continuum of healthcare management. So from nutrition therapy to lifestyle management, and one of the most important ways to help make sure that your patients can be stabilized and then maintain the health status that you've taken them through with nutrition therapy, they've got to make that change in their daily living. They have to know what products, what foods to select when they're going shopping, and more importantly, they have to learn how to prepare it. And it's really important when you think about the top 25 nutrient-dense products that I shared with you, is that a lot of them often are avoided by people because they don't think they taste good, or they don't think they can do anything to make them taste good. That reminds me, does everybody know what this is? Yeah, it's kale, right? I try to convince our next speaker not to use kale, but he has assured me that he can turn it into magic and make it taste awesome. And that's really the test for today. We're gonna really see if that's the case. So I'm excited to introduce to you really a partner and a collaborator and the leader of our culinary wellness program and standard process, who will walk us through how do you take something like kale that's in the top 20 nutrient-dense product list that I shared this morning and actually make it taste great. And you can use kale without having to massage it in oil before you can use anything, right?
Exactly, you don't need a massager.
So anyway, I'm excited to introduce to you Mark Allison, who's our culinary wellness chef and head of that.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon. I love being last because nobody wants to hang around. Everybody wants to get back to the hotel, have a cocktail, and something to eat. So I'm not going to keep you long. Hopefully you can understand what I'm saying, because I was born in South Carolina, a place called Charleston, so some people cannot understand my accent. Actually, I'm from England, little country over in Europe, a place called Newcastle upon Tyne. We brew the best beer in the world. It's called Newcastle Brown Ale. So I'm from the Northeast, pretty chilly. This is like a summer's day back home. So welcome to Kannapolis. Did you ever think you'd be in Kannapolis? Where is Kannapolis? And yet we've got a research center, which is probably one of the best in the world for nutrition. So it's a fabulous place to be if you enjoy good food. So I'm just going to tell you a little about me, okay, so I don't want to bore you. And then we're going to do a couple of dishes, and hopefully you're going to sample the dishes that I've made, okay? And this is why food and nutrition is so important to me, okay? So my name is Mark Allison. I am actually the executive chef at the Cabarrus Health Alliance. We are probably the only health department with a chef. And when you think about it, isn't that crazy? Because it's all about prevention. And food is medicine. And we need to learn how to cook. And we need to learn what to eat and what to do with food. So I work for the Cabarrus Health Alliance. And this is my family. Because I think, you know, we can all think of our families. You know, we might have a wife, a husband, we might have a son or daughter, or grandparents, or whatever. So this is my family here. And if we look at the bottom, one of the photographs on the left-hand side, that tall guy in the red, that's my eldest son, Jonathan. Then that beautiful lady, that's my wife, Alison Davis. Now, quick story, when I first met Alison, her friend said, it's going to be funny if you marry this guy, you're going to be called Alison Allison. Luckily, she was smarter than me, and she kept her name at Davis. So her name is Alison Davis, okay? And then that boy in the blue, he's a little bit troublemaker, that's Matthew. And then the young guy on the end in the red shirt, that's James. And actually now, believe it or not, he is the tallest one in the family. He's 6'1". He's got long hair down his back. He's got a goatee. It's 16. And his nickname is Jesus. He's the tallest one. So I have been a chef since I was 16 years old. Luckily, I had parents. My mother loved to cook, and my father was a really keen gardener. So basically, everything came out the garden, and along with my brother Michael and sister Julie, we would make food for that night with my mother. So we got brought up on really healthy food. So at 16, I didn't want to become a coal miner, because that's coals from Newcastle, or a shipyard builder, or make cars. So I decided to become a chef at 16. By the time I was 18, I was already working in France. And then I went to Spain, Portugal, and Italy. And then at 24, I thought, you know what? I need an education because I don't want to get to my age and still be in a restaurant cooking on a Friday night or a Saturday. So I went back to school. And for 10 years, I did night school. And I did 5 years culinary. Then I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. And then I thought, right, what am I going to do? I love to cook, but I don't want to work the hours. So I became a teacher. And that's when I met my wife. And I moved down to Wales. So my wife is Welsh. My boys are all Welsh. As I was teaching, I got offered to go on a Fulbright Teachers Exchange program. And Fulbright was started after World War II to bring the world together through education. So there was 500 American teachers going to go to England. And I was picked for the other people out of England. There was only 30 people going to come to America. So I was very lucky to get a position to come. So I was brought up on Starsky and Hutch, streets of San Francisco. So where do you think I was going to go? San Francisco or California? San Diego sounded really good. I'm thinking, right, I'm going to lie on the beach, learn to surf. The boys, I had 2 at the time, Jonathan and Matthew James, said yet to come along. We're going to have a great time in America. It's going to be brilliant. The unfortunate thing was there was only 1 chef out of 500 teachers. And he didn't live where I wanted to go. He didn't live in California. He lived in somewhere I never even dreamt of going. And you can guess my wife's reaction. We had a 2-year-old and an 8-month baby. She said, no. So I got in touch with Fulbright and I said, unfortunately, we can't go. Personal problems, we're not going to go. The guy who I was going to exchange with rang me up and he said, Mark, I've tried for 4 years to go to England. My daughter won a full scholarship to Oxford University. It's our final year. Nobody will exchange with me. So, of course, 2 guys on the phone, what happens? He said, Mark, it doesn't snow very often. It rarely gets below minus. You'll have a great time. So I said, Glenn, no problem. I'm going to come. I'm going to exchange with you. So I hung up. I went downstairs and I said, Allison, by the way, we're going to Alaska. Now, if you've been in that situation before, it usually goes quite loud. And there's usually some things getting smashed. And then, you know what? It went silent for about 2 months because she wasn't speaking to me. So we ended up going to Alaska. And you know what? We had a fabulous time. We lived in a log cabin just outside of Anchorage. We had wild bear walking down the road. We had a moose that used to live in the backyard. So on a morning, you could hear something scraping against the window, and you'd open the blind, and there'd be this moose's head this size, licking the salt off the window. We made some absolutely fabulous friends. So much so, actually, after the year, my wife didn't want to leave Alaska. I couldn't wait to get out there. We had the coldest winter in 50 years. It was minus 50 for 6 weeks, and we had snow for 9 months. And I'm thinking, this guy told me it rarely goes below minus, and there's not much snow. But anyway, we had a good time. But while we're there, my middle son now, but he was the youngest at the time, became ill. And we took him to the doctors, and the doctor said, oh, he's got a cold, he'll be fine. A week goes by, he's not eating, he's drinking gallons of water, he had lost a tremendous amount of weight, his diapers were always wet. I just happened to speak to my brother on the phone, who's a type 1 diabetic. And he said, you know what, I think he's a diabetic, why don't you take him back, get his blood tested, and see what they say. You've got nothing to lose. So we took him back to the doctors, and we said, can you test his blood? And the doctor said, he's 14 months. We've never known anybody that age be a type 1 diabetic. It's normally around about 6, 7 before it's going to happen. So anyway, we refused to leave our office until she tested his blood. Well, 30 minutes later, he's in intensive care. We found out that day he would have been in a coma and possibly dead the next day if we had not taken him to the hospital that day. He was in intensive care for 7 days. So anybody that knows about diabetes, especially type 1, not type 2, he's now insulin dependent. So he needs 2 shots of insulin a day. We count his carbs. We'll look at his diet. I'm classically trained French. Oh, tons of butter, tons of salt. Megan, tons of salt. Megan doesn't use salt. I still use a little bit. which he pulls me up about, and heavy cream. So that all changed. I looked at our diets and decided, you know what? We need to look at whole foods. We need to look at fruits and vegetables and whole grains and nuts and seeds and lean proteins. So it changed our eating habits. And Matthew turned out a good-looking boy. Takes after his mother. He's fit and well. He's at CPCC. He's hoping to go to Upstate next year and to do business. He actually wants to be a blacksmith, which I think is absolutely fabulous. But I keep saying to him, how are you going to pay your medical bills being a blacksmith? So he's now going into business, and he's going to do the blacksmithing as a hobby. So that's Matthew, and that's why I changed my eating habits for him. Because if it's one of your children, you're going to do everything possible to make them healthy and grow up healthy. So we went back to Wales, and I'm extremely competitive. I like to win. So in 10 years, I won, or my students won every competition in the UK. And there was one competition we had never entered called the Nestle Talk Door. It's the biggest culinary competition in Europe. Over 220 colleges enter every year. We decided to enter that year. And you know what? We won. Unbelievable. We won. We won $20,000 for the college I worked at. Went to America, went to DC, New York, Providence, Rhode Island, and Boston. Then the following year, I thought, you know what? We're going to enter this again. Nobody had won twice in a row. Nobody had won the competition twice. So we enter. Guess what? We'll win. Johnson & Wales said to me, why don't you come to America? So this time it wasn't Alaska, so my wife said, yes, let's go. By then, James was arrived. He was 2 years old. Matthew was 6. Jonathan was 8. So we came to Charlotte, and I became the Dean of Culinary Arts at Johnson & Wales. And if you I believe you're at the Marriott Hotel. The campus is literally a 5-minute walk from the hotel. It's absolutely wonderful. Beautiful. So, have you ever been in that stage when life is just fabulous? You've got a great job, you've got a great wife, you've got 3 fabulous boys, and you're part of the community, and everything is going great. And you're like 36,000 miles up in the sky, and you're looking out that airplane, and you're thinking, how can it get any better? So this is 2008. Unfortunately, things took a nosedive because we found out my wife was ill. So we found out she had a tumor in her stomach, and the doctor said, don't worry, because we're going to remove this, and she'll be perfectly fine. So my wife goes in for the operation, and this operation was 100% successful. The only problem was they removed 1 tumor and noticed 16 in her liver. She had a very rare blood cancer. So after the operation, they said, we've got some bad news for you. You've basically got 3 years to live. There's no medication, there's no treatment. That's what's going to happen. You've got 3 years. So, again, I turned to food, and I thought, okay, we're going to up this up, and we're going plant-based. So I changed my wife's eating habits to a plant-based diet. So it was lots of fruits and vegetables. My wife passed away in 2013, 8 years later after the diagnosis of stage 4 cancer. Now, terrible story. It's a Friday afternoon. You want to go to the hotel and have a drink and enjoy the night. I had the best 20 years of my life with the woman that I loved. She was my soulmate. So we knew for 8 years she was going to die. So we made the most of it. We went on vacation. She dressed up every time we'd go out. We took the kids out for dinner, went to Disney World every year for 8 years. We had a fabulous 8 years. My children knew she was going to die. She knew she was going to die. So did I. So we accepted the fact that she was going to leave us. And I have been left with 3 tremendous boys. So I can't complain. And I love what I do, because now I can preach to people why we should all eat whole foods, fruits and vegetables. So I left Johnson & Wales to open up a culinary school in New Orleans. So I'd fly down on a Monday, come back on a Friday, but that's when my wife became ill. So I had to leave that job. And then this old gentleman rang me up, David H. Murdoch, the owner of the Dole Food Company, who built this whole facility. And he said, my wife died of breast cancer. I hear your wife passed away with cancer. Would you like to come and work for me? So I said, yes. So for 3 years, I was the corporate chef at Dole. That's how I ended up on this campus. That's how I met John, who's now become a very good friend of mine, and how I'm now working at, or a consultant for Standard Process. Because then I got offered a job with the Cabarrus Health Alliance, and I accepted that. So, that's my son now. There's Jesus. I developed a blog in my wife's name, and for the last 2.5 years I've been doing recipes every week, all plant-based. And I just came out with a cookbook a month ago, and that's my son advertising the cookbook. So every recipe I do for Standard Process comes out of that cookbook, and it's all about whole foods and eating right. So if you want any more information, just go on chefmarkallison.com and you'll find all the recipes that you need to bring up your family healthily. Okay? So John mentioned that we are going to start a program about wellness, culinary wellness. And 2 weeks' time, we're going to start making videos. And we're going to start making videos basically with all the basic techniques. Why you want to buy a good heavy chopping board and not a flimsy plastic one. Why you want to buy a good quality knife that's going to last you years. Then we're going to show you the basics about food preparation with vegetables and fruits. Then we're going to start developing videos to show everybody how to actually cook these fruits and vegetables. Because it's amazing. Nobody knows how to cook with food, or real food these days. Everybody's used to opening a jar, emptying a box, and mixing it together, and that's dinner. It takes usually about the same length of time to make a really good meal as a really bad meal. You just need to know the techniques and how to cook. Okay? So, I think we're going to go to this recipe first, and we're going to use John's favorite vegetable, kale. Okay? And I was just telling John, 30 years ago, as a chef, nobody ever used kale. It was used as garnish on a salad bar. And now all of a sudden, we use kale. So we're going to use kale. So, this first recipe, I've got some almond milk, and they're going to come out with some samples. So we're going to put some almond milk in the blender. And of course, if you don't like almond milk, use fresh milk or use coconut milk. I usually blend my own almond milk because it's 2 ingredients then, water and almonds. Sometimes when you buy almond milk, there's a lot of preservatives in. We've got some pineapple. We've got some detox powder going in. We've got an apple, if we can get it out of the container. We've got some ice. So if you're watching a TV program called Chopped, or one of the TV programs, you'll often hear this all the time. Well, if you actually go into a professional kitchen, you will hear that. It's all for TV, so when you're dealing with a knife, you want to make it as smooth and as consistent as possible, so you're not making a lot of noise. So we're going to just chop up the apple. We're going to add our apple to our milk, and then we have got some kale. One more? Do you think, John? Shall I send this over and you can just eat it raw? So we've got our kale in. We'll not put the other one in for John, because John can have this later. How long did that take? A minute? John, I normally like a lot more kale in because mine's normally bright green. Okay? So we're going to try this, and you're going to try it, and hopefully you'll like this kale, apple, and pineapple with the detox powder. That's damn good. It's not bad at all. I might use this recipe. So our next recipe, we've got some broccolini, and all I did with the broccolini was basically boil it in some salted water for literally 2 minutes, okay? We've got some ancient grains, and we're just going to pop them into a pan of stock. It can be vegetable stock or chicken stock, or it could actually be just water, okay? We're going to add some cumin. We're going to add some chili flakes. Not too many, just to give a slight touch of heat. We've got a lemon, and we're just going to add some zest to the pan. If we hit the pan. And then we're going to add some juice. And then we're just going to let them grains simmer for around about 15 minutes. Okay? And that's the grains done. Once they come out, you can have this dish either hot or cold. If you're dealing with grains, what you've got to remember is it's a 2-to-1 ratio. 1 weight of grains and 2 lots of water. So it's 1 cup of grains to 2 cups of water. Okay? Unless you're making risotto, then it's 3-to-1. So with our grains, we're going to add some olive oil. We're going to add some raisins. We've got some pine nuts. Some lemon juice to go with the olive oil. And you notice I haven't used any salt. Okay? We've got some cherry tomatoes. And all we're going to do is cut them in half. And if you think about knives, when I was at Johnson & Wales, we would give our students $500 worth of knives. So they'd have probably 20 knives in a knife kit. At the end of the day, after working 37 years as a chef, you only need 3 instruments. You need a chef's knife, which is around about 8 inches. Okay? You need a paring knife, which is about 4 inches, and a peeler. Them 3 things, you can do around about 95% of everything you're going to need to do in a kitchen. So it's well worth paying between $60 and $100 for a good knife. This one was won by a student of mine, and he gave me the knife, and then he went to Australia for 2 weeks. He won a competition, and I got the knife. He went to Australia, but it was very nice of him. So I've had this knife about 15 years. And all I do is I sharpen it once a week, and it works perfect. I never put it in the dishwasher. Okay? Wash it by hand, and then it will last a lifetime. I have got a mechanical sharpener. It's about $150. It's well worth the investment because this gets sharpened once a week. We've got some cilantro, mint, and parsley. We're going to put that on the chopping board. And then all you want to do is roll it up into a ball, and then take your knife, and then you're going to keep your knife rocking backwards and forwards. So you don't even have to look where your fingers are because they should be out of the way. And the knife never comes off the board. Okay? Once you've got it to a certain degree, then put your left hand on top of the knife, and you're just going to rock it backwards and forwards. So all of these simple techniques that save a lot of time in the kitchen, you're going to learn through the Standard Process Wellness program. Culinary Wellness will be online, short videos, the recipes will be online, and then it's just a matter of getting in the kitchen and learning how to cook. Because at the end of the day, cooking is a life skill. And to think we live in a society where nobody knows how to cook now is ridiculous. So, you notice I'm keeping the chopping board clean. There's nothing else on that chopping board when I'm cutting something. Then we've got our broccolini. We've got some feta cheese or blue cheese. We're going to take our bowl. We're going to mix it together. Look at all the colors. Beautiful colors. The aroma of the mint, the cilantro, the parsley, the lemon juice. Absolutely fabulous. Then we're just going to pop that into our salad bowl. Take our broccolini. Place that on the top. Broccolini, you can eat the whole stem. And then we're just going to add some cheese. And there's a dish that's full of nutrition that literally takes you 15 minutes to do. So we've got a smoothie. We've got our broccolini with ancient grains, blue cheese, tomatoes, mint, cilantro, parsley. What's it like? I've got a question mark. Oh. If I'm at home, I steam everything. The kitchen I was in yesterday, I didn't have that opportunity. Because I had so much to do, it was just dropped in a pan. But actually at home, I've got some microwavable containers, okay, that I just steam in them, and it takes less than a minute and a half. So I steam all my vegetables, unless I'm roasting them. Because if you roast your vegetables, that's the best flavor. Especially something like parsnips or carrots. The flavor is absolutely tremendous. Any questions? How do I clean them? I just put them in the running water. Running water. I'll tell you one thing. We get caught up with all of these things. Well, what's in the water? How we're going to clean things? What about GMOs and all of this? At the end of the day, if the majority of your diet is fruits and vegetables, and you clean them before you eat them, just with running water, it's going to be 10 times better than anything that you eat and processed. I try not to get hung up with the environment and where the food comes from, because everybody works to a budget. In Kannapolis, when I'm going out to the community, there's a lot of people making less than $20,000 a year. Now, they're not going to be buying organic. They're not going to be buying grass-fed. If you can afford that, buy it. But what I would like to say is, I would rather you just eat whole foods, wherever they come from, than processed foods. Because salt, fat, sugar, preservatives, colorants, all of these additives that have been added to the food supply for the last 40, 50 years, that's what's killing everybody in this country through either type 2 diabetes, heart disease, or cancer. So I am not fanatical about this is the way you should eat. Just eat lots of fruits and vegetables. That's all you got to do. You realize that fruits and vegetables have got phytochemicals in them. The phytochemicals are what's going to help you fight type 2 diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. So just the mere fact that you're eating more fruits and vegetables, you're going to live a longer, healthier life. This one was farro, and it had quinoa in and some brown rice. Not necessarily, no. So if you've got a gluten allergy, then you might not want to eat that. But let's be honest about gluten-free. There's less than 1% of the entire population who've got a gluten allergy. This one here is actually called Mercer. It's American made. You can buy it online. You've got F-Dick, you've got Sabatier, you've got a whole host of different knives. Anything round about $50 to $100 is what you want to pay. Try not to buy any of the Japanese knives because they're a nightmare to sharpen. If you just buy a normal standard knife, this will last you your entire life. I can guarantee it. So that's my story, and that's why I became involved with Whole Foods, and that's why I love working with John and Standard Process, because we're going to be doing this culinary wellness program. And hopefully, when you're supplying your customers, your patients with whole food products, and then you're getting them to actually eat whole foods at home, hopefully you're going to have some healthy patients. Any other questions? I don't want to keep you from your cocktail and dinner. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. You know what? All three of them went to Johnson & Wales when we used to do the kids' cooking camp, and they all enjoyed it for 5 years, but when Dad's around, they would rather me cook. So tonight, when I leave now, I've got 2 in the house and 1's working. I'll be cooking dinner tonight. I am very lucky in the fact that I get to spend at least an hour or 2 hours quality time with my 3 boys every night. I can't get them out of the house. You know, one of them's just about to join the Marines, one of them's going off to college, and one's still at school, but they don't want to leave home. You know, I'm saying, you know what, when I was your age, I was already working in Europe. Get out. But they've got a good lifestyle, because Dad still pays all the bills, Dad buys all the food, and I'm making them dinner. So I am lucky in the fact that every night I get to sit with my 3 boys for an hour to 2 hours, and I hear their problems, I hear their concerns, we have a good meal, and we can discuss things. None of them are into alcohol, drugs, or anything like that, as far as I'm aware, and I think I could tell by the look of them if they were. But I've got 3 really good boys that have been through a rough time, but just the fact that we get around the kitchen table every night and we eat a home-cooked meal makes all the difference in the world. They're not upstairs playing Xbox or watching Netflix and eating their own food. They're with me. I know what they're eating, and I know what they're talking about. So it's that quality time with the family, which I really appreciate. Every night I'm going to leave here, I'll be texting them, empty the dishwasher, set the table, prepare the vegetables, and 30 minutes from now I'll be home and I make the dinner and we sit down and we eat. Okay. Thank you very much.
Mark, we have just 2 questions, 2 additional questions. Do you eat meat?
Do I eat meat? Yeah, I eat meat. I eat meat, but I eat very little. And one of the reasons why I still eat meat is my boys actually like to eat meat. Otherwise, actually, Mr. Murdoch is a pescatarian, and I eat a lot of fish. And I'd rather eat fish. But because I've got 3 boys. Well, wild-caught salmon would be one, and tuna, and halibut. I would say them 3.
What cooking pans do you recommend?
Sorry?
Pans? Cooking pans? Like what do you like
cooking
to cook?
pans? You know what? Again, mine are all clad.
All clad.
All clad.
Mine too.
Good choice.
Yeah. All right. Give a round of applause.
Enjoy your weekend.